Would you be the jerk for telling your own parents you'll only support them if they move back to their home country? We'll get into that in a bit, but first, am I the jerk for making eggs at 3 a.m.? I, male 25, had to pull an all-nighter for an assignment and I got hungry, so I fried some eggs at 3 a.m. My roommate Jane, female 22, is a light sleeper, so I didn't make any loud noises, but she woke up to the sizzling noise of the frying pan. Jane got angry at me and demanded I take the eggs off the pan because of the sizzling noise. But I wonder if I'm inconsiderate or Jane just needs to get earplugs or a noise machine. So, am I the jerk for frying eggs at night? Or is Jane just too much of a light sleeper and making sizzling noises at night an acceptable roommate behavior? So personally, I would assume anything that's kind of like the baseline audio that happens when you're preparing food is almost never going to make you the jerk. Maybe there could be some poor choices like nobody wants to wake up to popping popcorn in the middle of the night, but overall, personally, I don't think OP is the jerk, especially when it's for a very legitimate reason like they're studying and they're working and they're hungry. It's not even necessarily a "why are you even up making food at this hour" kind of thing. Greek American Dom commented, "Not the jerk. Of course you should be allowed to make yourself a meal in the middle of the night, assuming, which you claim you did, you are not being overly noisy. If Jane is that light of a sleeper, she should take precautions for it. I've used earplugs to great effect in the past." OP responded saying, "Jane's main concern was the sizzling noise when we interacted, but I can imagine Jane was probably also puzzled or irritated I was cooking at 3 a.m. Also, hi, I'm Steven, and if you guys enjoy getting to decide whether or not all of these people are jerks, why not hit those like and subscribe buttons down below? That said, our next story is, am I the jerk for not sitting with my partner at a funeral? On Monday, it was my dad's funeral. I was one of the pallbearers, and I also obviously sat on the front row. Sitting with me was my brother, sister, my dad's 2 sisters, and his brother. Everyone else just sat where they could get a seat. My girlfriend was sat in the second row. She hasn't met a lot of my family because I don't see them often. After the funeral, she started complaining about being sat with people she didn't know and said she should have been sat with me. I told her there was no room on the front row and my siblings and aunt and uncle's partners were all fine sitting further back. She said I should have sat with her. I pointed out it's my dad's funeral, of course I'm going to be sat at the front, and said she's being selfish trying to make the funeral all about her. She said that's not fair and that she didn't want to be sat with people she didn't know. I just said it's hardly like she had to sit and chat to them. It was sitting in silence for under an hour. She just said that I should be sympathizing with her. I again reminded her that it's my dad's funeral, yet she's demanding sympathy because she had to sit next to people. She said I was insensitive and should apologize. Am I the jerk for not sitting with my partner during the funeral? I would just hope most people would see OP as clearly not the jerk here. I just think it's so obvious why OP was sitting up front and why they should have just been okay and powered through it, even if you don't really want to have to sit next to a bunch of strangers. I mean, if anything, just do it for the support, right? Comfortable C2454 commented, "Not the jerk. Your girlfriend is acting super entitled. Family and pallbearers sit together for a reason. Your girlfriend should have been there for you to help comfort you. Not complaining because she had to sit by people she didn't know for an hour." Our next story is, am I the jerk for hanging up on my girlfriend after she left me on hold for 5 minutes? 30 minutes into our phone call, my girlfriend, 30-year-old female, asked me, 40-year-old male, if she could put me on hold to take a call from her female friend that was calling. I said sure, no problem. I had the expectation that she would be a minute or less, just long enough to tell her that she was on the other line with me and would call her back. Well, 1 minute turned into 4 to 5 minutes and then I hung up. She called back and was upset that I hung up. Am I the jerk for expecting her to only leave me on hold long enough to tell her friend that she would call her back? To me, leaving someone, especially your significant other, on hold for another friend who was just calling to chat, non-emergency, longer than 30 to 60 seconds is rude. So, am I the jerk or is she? I don't think OP's the jerk here for being a little tilted about this and pointing it out. I think a lot of people in that situation are going to have the same assumption. Oh, they're just going to say that they're talking or whatever and get off the line real quick. Sure. Nobody enjoys third-wheeling 2 other people's completely separate conversation. I think most of us can think back to a moment where a friend was over and their parent came to pick them up, and all of a sudden your parents and theirs just suddenly have this 30-minute convo while you're awkwardly just like, "So I guess you're leaving soon, huh?" to your friend. Snoo Opinions 8755 commented, "Not the jerk, she shouldn't have been upset with you for hanging up. If anything, she should have just said she's sorry and then it would all be good. But I really wouldn't care too much if my wife forgot about me and was talking to her friend. I would just shoot a text saying, "Call me when you're done," or whatever. Our next story is, am I the jerk for telling my husband that I will never drive with him in the car? Hey y'all, I'm 30-year-old female and I don't have a driver's license. I grew up in a country where owning a car is not all that common. Moved to the US 5 years ago, was a student for the first 2 years so couldn't afford driving lessons and didn't have time to learn as well. Then I got married. My husband has been driving since his teen years. He grew up in the same country as I did. My husband moved here about 10 years ago. He's taught all his friends driving. He has taught friends of friends driving. He forced me to learn to drive. Fair enough, gotta drive while I'm in the US. He told me he would teach me. I was so excited. But the yelling wouldn't stop. Every time I tried to get behind the wheel, we would end up coming home with me crying. This was 3 years ago. It was so bad that at this point I am traumatized to drive. I enrolled myself in a driving school 2 years ago. 10 hours worth of driving lessons cost about $600. I did well and the trainer said that I'm good and just need to practice, but whom would I practice with? My husband. I don't have any close friends here whom I can ask for this favor. Again, the yelling, and I've eventually lost all the confidence. Today we tried again, and as usual, I got scolded for putting our lives at risk by not taking the turn faster. I immediately pulled over and asked him to drive. Once we came home, I told him that let it cost $1,000 or $2,000, I will go to the driving school and practice with them and get my license, and I shall never drive again with my husband in the car unless it's an emergency. He got so furious and shouted at me, "Am I the jerk?" I sympathize quite a bit with OP here. Growing up when I was learning to drive, I definitely had some people who were wanting to teach me who were, let's say, kind of aggressive like OP's describing of their partner. As a person who innately had some kind of anxiety when it comes to driving and getting behind the wheel, that kind of stuff really didn't help. Flagrant Digress commented, "Not the jerk. I was in a similar situation when I learned to drive. One parent would yell and scold and I'd get flustered and make mistakes and it always felt like a test. My other parent was much more helpful and was better at correcting mistakes without yelling." It sounds like you've clearly communicated the aspects of his driving instruction that you do not like. If he can't adjust his teaching to make it helpful to you, then you should be able to pursue driver's ed that's actually constructive for you. After all, the goal is for you to earn your license and be able to drive on your own. It kinda seems like he's mad that you aren't going to put up with his yelling and scolding anymore. Our next story is, am I the jerk for hiring a gardener when my boyfriend wants me to mow the lawn? My boyfriend and I live together and share a house with about a quarter acre. Some of it steep hills because we live on the water on high table. My boyfriend typically mows the grass, but he's currently injured and asked me to do it. I tried to do it once and it was a big struggle because I don't have the strength to push the mower up the hills. I proceeded to hire a professional gardener at $70 a pop to come and do it. My boyfriend got annoyed at me because he says a woman who does yard work is super sexy, it's a waste of our money, and that I should learn how to do it just in case he's away or if something happens to him. He told me to stop being a princess. Am I the jerk for sticking to my guns? First of all, it's hard for OP to actually do, if not downright impossible for OP to do because of the hills. As long as they've got the disposable income to spend $70 a pop, how is OP the jerk? They could be saving money, but it's easier and they literally can't do it. It's Emmy12 commented, "Not the jerk. You tried mowing the lawn, but it was physically challenging for you, especially with the steep hills. Hiring a professional is a practical solution, and it's your choice how you handle tasks you're not comfortable with. Your boyfriend's comment about yard work being sexy and calling you a princess is dismissive of your effort. If mowing the lawn is too difficult, hiring help is reasonable, especially since it's a temporary solution while he's injured." This next story is, am I the jerk for the way I reacted to my friend's pregnancy? So I'm a 22-year-old university student, and almost all my friends are 18 to 25 years old students or recent graduates living in my uni town. Also, almost all of my friends are LGBT and in queer relationships, so there's rarely a pregnancy scare in my friend groups, but when there is, it is always a negative thing. One of my closest friends from my hometown is 31-year-old Sadie, who is a heterosexual woman. In the 10 years I've been friends with her, she has never had a serious or long-term relationship, just a series of situationships and one-night stands. She is financially stable and supports herself, / is not a student, but she's always said that she never wants kids and never wants to settle down. I stayed in my uni town over the summer while I finished my master's, so I haven't seen Sadie for a while. But we talk every day and she's never said anything about getting into a relationship. 2 weeks ago, we didn't talk for 3 days and I was getting worried about her, and then she texted me randomly at 3 a.m., "I'm pregnant." So I responded, "Oh crap, are we happy or sad about this? Who's the father?" Because I didn't want to celebrate too soon, as everything I've known about her makes me think she wouldn't be happy about this. She didn't respond, but over 24 hours later, she called me to chew me out on the phone, telling me why couldn't I just be happy for her and that it's really rude and disrespectful to ask the questions I did. I told her that none of my other friends would be happy about it, and she's always spoken about how she didn't want kids. So I just wanted to make sure I was reacting properly, and she didn't sound positive about it in her message. She said I was psychoanalyzing her and she's an adult so she can do whatever she wants, and that if I'm going to be negative, she doesn't need me in her life. If she told me she was happy about it, I would have been happy for her and supportive. I just didn't know. She also said she trusted me by telling me and she hadn't told anyone else. Also, it was really invasive of me to ask about her sex life. In our entire friendship, she's always told me about her sex life because we're open like that. Then she hung up on me and we haven't spoken since. She's ignored all of my texts and calls. Am I the jerk? I'm worried I've lost a close friend over this. We've never fought like this before. But also, I don't know if what I said was so wrong, so I just wanted to get an outside opinion. Thanks. Edit, hey, sorry, I was out all day. I just wanted to answer the 2 questions I've seen the most. We actually became friends aged 13 and 21 in February 2015, so nearly 10 years, not a full 10 years, she was almost 22 at the time. We met online in a fandom and later found out we live in the same city. Nothing weird has ever gone on. Also, I'm in the UK, started uni at 18 and just finishing up my master's now, age 22, 23 in November. Also, she still has not texted me back. Thanks for all your comments. I'm going home for Christmas, and if we haven't spoken by then, I'll see if she wants to meet up. I just think OP's reaction was pretty reasonable and pretty mature, actually. I don't think it's some crazy psychoanalyzing when you know that the person stated, "I don't want kids" in the past. When you get a text, "I'm pregnant, ... If you don't ask how you're supposed to feel, I feel like taking that 50-50 shot in the dark on going either way with it is honestly setting you up to be way more of a jerk than asking. Fleur the Least commented, "Not the jerk. Given the closeness of your relationship and her stance on motherhood and relationships, and the fact that she sent this at 3 a.m., i.e. during the bad news hours, you asking what you did was perfectly reasonable. Heck, I have a newlywed close friend who sent me a picture of a document from her doctor informing her that she was in fact pregnant, and she captioned it, 'What?' And my response was, 'How do we feel about this?' There was no question who daddy was, so that was one issue that was never on the table. And you know what? At that moment, she wasn't happy. She was shocked and thrown off because she had several plans that would have to be deferred. She was off for a few days. She became very happy when she finally wrapped her mind around it. The baby's here now and we're all thrilled and moving gloriously forward with life, but the truth was when she told me, I had no idea how she felt and neither did she. A woman can feel any number of ways about a new pregnancy, and if you're close enough and the circumstances are murky enough, asking, as her friend, is smart. I assume she was fine with my question because I'm now that baby's godmother, so all's well that ends well. I get that who's the father probably made her feel judged, so maybe that question could have waited, but I'm assuming you were just shocked by what you'd read. Given what you'd said, it wasn't from a place of malice, just surprise. Nobody responds perfectly when they're shocked. I See Blue Dragon commented, "Heck, I was married for 3 years. We were together for 10. I was 28 and we were actively trying for a baby, and when I held the positive pregnancy test after the first try, I was like, wait, did I think this through thoroughly?" And I agree with you. Happy news usually doesn't come at 3 a.m. with a flat text without emojis. Our next story is, am I the jerk for telling my mom I'm not going on vacation to celebrate my half-brother's 16th birthday? There's so much background. I, 16-year-old male, will be 17 soon. I live with my dad. My parents are divorced, but there's a twist. They were already divorced when I was conceived, like a couple of weeks after. Dad was clear he wanted to be in my life. Mom and him didn't get back together. While Mom was pregnant with me, she met her husband Dan. It started awkward, especially when Dan showed up to the hospital when Mom was in labor, but Dad was in the delivery room. It got worse during Mom and Dan's engagement because he wanted to take me out of state for 4 nights without Mom. Dad needed to give permission for it to happen, but Dad said no. Dan argued that he was going to be my second dad. I'd grow up with 2 dads and how he should be trusted to take me out of state for 4 nights. Dan was always talking crap about my dad and telling me about that incident and how Dad treated him like a lesser parent. He also talked about Dad pushing him, Dan, out of the delivery room, which makes me think that there's a lot of jealousy over that still, too. He also mentioned the fact that my parents were divorced before I came along. I hated Dan for doing that, and my loyalty is with my dad. I have rejected Dan every possible way, and Dan blames my dad for that. My mom never told Dan to knock it off. She would also encourage us to spend time together. I made Dan's life heck when I was younger in retaliation for how he talked about my dad. I also made a few big scenes when Dan would try making others believe he was my dad. I did this in front of my half-brother too. I probably hate Dan as much as Dan hates my dad. My half-brother has grown up knowing how I feel about Dan and how Dan feels about my dad, so he hates my dad on Dan's behalf. He doesn't like how I treat Dan, which means we fight a lot. My half-brother tries to say Dan is a better dad and I should treat him better and crap. We do not like each other. And I can honestly say I do not love or care about my half-brother, and I have zero loyalty to him. We have never ever had a good relationship. We fight constantly about Dan and Dad. Our relationship, if you can even call it that, sank when I told my half-brother I would never like or respect Dan, and I would celebrate if him and Mom divorced and I would never see him again. My half-brother feels like Dan deserves better. I hated Mom's house, so last year, Dad on my behalf asked the judge to let him have custody. I was interviewed and custody was changed, but I still have to go 1 weekend a month until I'm 18. My half-brother is turning 16 in May. Mom has promised him a birthday vacation. She wanted to check dates with me so we would all be there, and I told her I'm not going, that I'm not celebrating her other son and won't in the future either. She started crying and asking why we had to be like this, and she told me we're family and I should be there because I might regret losing a brother one day. I told her I wasn't changing my mind, and she told me I was so unfair to everyone. Am I the jerk? OP's not the jerk. Dan clearly immediately violated the classic golden step-parent faux pas golden rule. Do not try to force yourself into a position as the new parent or parent number 2 or anything analogous to I am now dad and or mom. Let it happen naturally if it even happens at all, or it's almost a guaranteed flop. Royally Oki commented, "Not the jerk. This all started with Dan declaring you were going to have 2 dads. If he had just accepted a role as step-parent and friend, all of the fighting and animosity may never have happened. This looks like a done deal at this point, and everyone has to accept the situation as it is." OP responded saying, "Dad is still trying to win, but I meant what I told my half-brother about how glad I would be if he and my mom divorced, and I never saw him again. I have zero respect for the guy and don't ever mention him when I talk about family to others. But he's blinded by this need to stick it to my dad." Our next story is, am I the jerk for kicking my cousin out over Reddit post? I, 28-year-old female, and my husband, 29-year-old male, hosted my cousin, 23-year-old female, at our place since last summer because she wanted to find a job at our city, and we were the only ones she knew. We aren't close, but my parents begged me to let her stay. My husband has very little native blood. He doesn't know the language or culture, but we did name our newborn after his grandfather, just his middle name, fake names, John Jertun Jun Harrison. Well, 5 months after our beautiful boy birth, I met up with an old colleague who showed me a screenshot of my boy's name on a subreddit specifically to make fun of uncommon or misspelled names. Though the post has been deleted, my colleague screenshotted it because she thought it sounded familiar. In the comments, she remarked the OP has also made snickering comments on my child's names, with people cheering her on. We dug a little further and I could confirm it was my cousin's profile, from her interests to her pictures post. Me and my husband confronted her about it, and she said majority agreed with her that it was a stupid and horrendous name. She also said it didn't matter that it was a cultural name since my husband and I can't speak and isn't even involved in the culture. My husband was livid and we decided to kick her out. She has since blasted us on Facebook and family group chat to kick her out in a foreign city, and since she was jobless, and we're setting our son up for failure with names like that. She also said she was doing us a favor by showing us how horrible of a name it was. However, I don't see that as the case, as it was posted almost a year ago and she seems to have no intention to reveal to us otherwise. So I would like to know, am I really the jerk? Edit, I saw the post on the other subreddit. Let's clarify, the fake names was John and Harrison because it's very basic white names, like Daniel will be able to replace it, or Hemsworth. Jertunjun is the actual name. There's actually quite a few of them here in my city. Mandawui Jertunjun Unapingu. Here's one famous singer with that exact same name for reference purpose. The reason why my husband is very distanced from his culture, would you guys like to take a guess what colonialism did to Australian Aboriginals? So, with that very complicated name that I probably butchered out of the way, I think OP's pretty clearly not the jerk. Listen, I kind of get tearing apart people who name their kids Braxton, but spelt with 12 letters or whatever. Or even there was a recent story I read where somebody named their kid Ruff, as in the sound a dog makes. But when it comes to a cultural name, you might think it's weird or crazy. For those just listening or not reading the captions, Jertunjun is spelled D-J-A-R-R-T-J-U-N-T-J-U-N. So obviously if you have no concept of the culture, you're gonna see that and go, did you name your kid by smashing the keyboard or what? But when you understand it's a cultural thing that you do have ties to, it probably is going to be really uncommon in a different place. But you should be able to understand why it was done. Comfortable C2454 commented, not the jerk. Your cousin abused your hospitality by making fun of your son's middle name. There is no excuse for this. She freaked around and found out the consequences, and she never did plan on telling you about the post. She was just looking for likes and followers for her profile. Our next story is, am I the jerk for initially laughing after seeing my boyfriend shaved his facial hair? My boyfriend, 24-year-old male, and I, 21-year-old female, have been officially together for around 5 months. He's had a full beard the entire time I've known him, and I guess he's mostly kept a beard since he started growing facial hair around 15, so the only pictures I've seen of him without one are from when he was in middle school or younger. Yesterday, when he was on lunch at work, he FaceTimed me and surprised me that he had gone fully shaved. He didn't tell me he was planning it, so it kind of shocked me. When I answered the phone, my first thought was that it actually was his high school-aged brother that he lives with, that looks a lot like him. And when I realized it was him, I kind of gasped and then couldn't help myself from laughing for a minute. Obviously, he seemed kind of upset, but I tried to make sure and tell him that I still like how he looks. I was just very surprised because he looks decently different and much younger without facial hair, and I wasn't expecting to answer the call to that. He still seemed upset and quickly hung up afterwards. Said something like, "This is why I never fully shave." I was supposed to see him today, but he's been pretty dry with few responses since then. Am I the jerk for my reaction? I don't think OP is the jerk. I honestly think laughter is a very normal response in a lot of situations. And when you know a person who's had a beard the entire time you know them and they shave it, it really can be quite a difference. So for OP to expect seeing somebody see something they completely unexpected and then also have momentary confusion and reflection that they were confused for that moment, it's not crazy that OP had a laughing reaction. It's not like OP said anything negative or said, "Oh, that looks awful." They still said they liked how they looked, it just took them a beat. Legal Run 4034 commented, "You are the jerk. If you called him up with a new haircut out of nowhere and he didn't think it was you and then laughed when he found out it was you, you wouldn't hesitate to say he was a jerk." Accomplished Ways 777 commented, "A haircut is a change, but the beard hides half of the face. When guys that have never been seen by their girlfriends without a beard decide to surprise them by shaving the beard, expect some shocked reaction. I swear, every guy that I've seen with a beard and after a while without the beard looks so unbelievably different, I can't even put in words. It suddenly shows facial features that were hidden by the beard, and it's shocking, believe me. I didn't recognize a friend of mine that grew a beard for a while and decided to shave it after a few years. I literally didn't recognize him. This next story is, am I the jerk for spotting a girl at the gym while my girlfriend was there? I'm 20, my girlfriend is 23, and we started dating 5 months ago. We usually work out together, but she was running late from class, so I started without her. While there, I noticed a girl struggling with her squat form as her knees were bending in unevenly and her back wasn't straight. So I gave her a tip to avoid injury. After that, I went back to my routine. A few minutes later, she asked me to spot her for a heavy set. Since the gym was literally empty other than us, I agreed, thinking it was just common sense to help someone lifting heavy. I was standing pretty close to her to make sure she wouldn't get hurt, and we ended up chatting a little after the set. I made a few jokes about her form, which made her laugh, but I didn't think much of it as it felt like a normal gym interaction. However, my girlfriend arrived right at the time and saw us like that. She didn't say anything at the time, but later she was really upset. She told me it looked like I was being too friendly and that helping her with her form and spotting her like that when she wasn't there crossed the line. She also said I shouldn't be that close to another girl in the gym, especially while joking around. I tried explaining that I was just helping someone and didn't think it was inappropriate, but she's still mad about it. So, I kind of get her being upset, but realistically, OP's not the jerk here. I guess in a way, it honestly will vary depending on the comfort and limits and boundaries of your relationship though. I think there would be legitimately people out there that would say in a relationship with me, what OP did is inexcusable. But to me personally, I feel like that's going a bit too far. Naked Life Coach commented, "You probably could have solved this by waving your girlfriend over and introducing her as your girlfriend to the person you were spotting. Not the jerk, but relationships take communication, and it's up to you now, rather than arguing your point, to ask her what you could do in the future to mitigate her fears. That said, if she's irrationally jealous, that could also be a red flag. But typically jealousy has some basis, whether it's her own insecurities or your behaviors, or a combination of both. ETA, what would you feel like if you saw her standing close to another man in the gym, smiling and laughing, and she ignored introducing you when you arrived?" Our next story is, am I the jerk for telling my parents that I will only support them if they move back to their home country? My parents moved to North America from a developing country when I was 4. My siblings were 2 and 6 months. My dad worked hard to make a life for us, and my mom worked hard making sure we didn't waste the opportunities they were providing for us. They also sent money home to help my grandparents, sometimes to the detriment of our family here. My sisters are all married with families now. My parents are getting ready to retire and they want us to supply them the way they supported our grandparents. The problem is that we cannot afford to pay for everything here. Even with my parents' savings and my dad's pension, they cannot maintain the lifestyle they have while my dad works. However, with their money and ours combined, they can live like gods back home. We could sell their house, use that money to buy them a villa in a gated community. They could fly back to see us all the time. They could literally live in the top 1% there instead of scraping by here. The only problem is the grandkids. They want to see them all the time. They think that my sisters and I are exiling them. We are offering them a chance to have great lives in a country with no snow, where food costs are 1/4 to 1/6 those here, where the healthcare is actually rated higher than here. We're looking at the next 20 years. When everything is said and done, I offered them the exact same amount they sent their folks. It will buy their groceries every month, and that's it. They think I'm being stingy and mean. OP's definitely not the jerk. Honestly, if parents grow up and get anything from their kids, that's kind of just like icing on the cake. If parents create this expectation that when they do get old and gray, their kids are going to support them or send them money or move them into their house and take care of them and change their diapers, I think there's going to be a lot of parents that are going to be in for a tough time when they get to that point. OP's giving them an offer that really makes sense for them really as a whole. And even then, alternatively is still offering some kind of assistance. Defop commented, "Definitely not the jerk. I try not to judge other cultures from a place of ignorance, but the idea of future generations supporting previous generations is basically a freaking Ponzi scheme. It's such a bad way to build a society. Your parents are being stubborn. They want to have their cake and eat it too. They didn't support your grandparents living in the States. They supported them living in your home country. You're being generous by offering to do the same. I will never be able to afford the retirement I want either, because my ideal retirement would mean a beautiful house in the Caribbean, a yacht to get drunk on, and a membership at the nicest golf course nearby. Probably ain't gonna happen, but I'm sure as heck not going to make that anyone else's problem." But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to hear another crazy Am I the Jerk Here story, check out that video on the left. Or if you missed my latest video, check out that video on the right. That said, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.